number of conservative businesses say this is very real. We can have a debate about how to handle it. I'm a very strong supporter of renewable energy, solar and wind. Three chairs. Three cheers for Oregon State. We just announced here a few weeks ago the biggest research effort looking at oceans and tidal and opportunities for renewable energy for the Pacific Ocean. So part of what we can all do is particularly talk to those business people and say, how in the world are you going to be able to plan and predict what's ahead? And aren't we able to sell insurance very well in years ahead if you don't join us in this fight against climate change?
Ready, and there was 2831. And then you can also 8841 get ready, and 2897.
Mayor, while we're doing this, let's just have a quick minute to let our elected officials from the area stand up. I think Lisa Gurley is here. Where is Lisa? And also Jim Gurley is here. I think he's president of Steelworkers. We're happy to have him. Where's our wonderful Benton Commissioner Annabelle? Is she floating around here somewhere? If there are any other elected officials, stand up so we can give you a big round of applause. Appreciate your local elected officials. You know, most of them, as part of their job, they get a house, and a driver, and a car. They're doing it because they love their communities. We appreciate you all.
I'm 11 from North Albany Elementary School in 5th grade. I'd like to know, how did you get to your job in this position and that?
Where are you?
That there's not many women senators. What can me and my friends do to reach that?
Good on you.
Learning good grammar.
First of all, there are a lot more women senators than there used to be. And we saw a number of terrific women get elected just this time. And so, you got witnesses here. Did you say you were 11? How about in a couple of years will you be an intern in our office? Only thing I would tell you, though, is keep doing what you obviously are doing, which is participating in community affairs, getting a good education, which is not, I'm not very proud of what I did. When I was your age, when I was 11, really 12, I decided all I wanted to do was to play in the NBA. And that was a ridiculous idea. Because I was too small, and I made up for it by being really slow. I got a college scholarship, and then, as the mayor noted, after a couple of years, I transferred to Stanford. And what I just tell you is, and you're obviously aware of this, be involved in your community, learn as many different subjects as you possibly can, particularly foreign languages. And obviously, technology is hugely important. I kind of specialized in that. When I came to the Senate, there was really only a couple of senators who even knew what a computer was. And so, yeah. And a round of applause. There are really lots of ways for young people to be involved. First senator, a couple weeks ago, you may have seen the picture. When I was sworn in, my wife and I are older parents. We have twins that are 9, and Scarlett little Wyden, the baby who's 4. Bright red hair. When I was sworn in, the Vice President said, put your hand on the Bible, raise your right hand. William Peter Wyden also raised his right hand. And he kept raising it higher and higher. And finally, when I was done, and the Vice President was done, he looked at me, he looked at William, held out his hand to William, and said, William, welcome to the Senate. You're going to do a fine job. So, we want your generation to be involved, okay? Thank you for coming.
Who has 2831? Oh. Okay, all right. So 8841, 2897, if they come forward. Oh, there's a hand up there. Right up there. And while he's making his way up, how about a 2808 to get ready? And an 8888. You kind of have a lucky number there.
There have been so many things in the news that are patently false or demonstrably untrue. Like the number of people at the inauguration, the number of supposed illegal votes.
They're called alternative facts.
What can we do to promote truth in news, and what are you doing?
Question was, what can we do? What am I doing? That's the reason that I flew pretty much all night to be here, because we voted at 6:30 yesterday morning on the floor of the Senate. I said, I'm get on the plane, it looks like the snow's going to take a red eye back. So I intend to do everything I can to be as active with community meetings. We have a program for high school students called Listening to the Future, because I'm exactly where you are. I mean, it's one thing to have a difference of opinion on an issue, but it's another thing to stand right here and say that this is not right. And that's kind of what this feels like, is on matters that are clearly not true. People say, well, gee, it's an alternative fact or something of that nature. So I think what's important is we do more of what we're doing. This isn't the only gym that's packed today in the United States. We do more in the schools, and that's why it was so wonderful we had that 11-year-old.
Libraries.
You know, our program, Listening to the Future, began a few years ago. That was that ill-advised government shutdown. And at one point, everybody just said, last stop, we're opening the open up, we're going home. And I came off the Senate floor, and the press asked me what I was going to do. You got a week where you could be on your own. And I just said, you know, I've been watching adults bicker here in Washington, D.C. I'm going home to Oregon and go to the high schools because I want to talk to some adults with common sense. Let's just do as much of what we're doing right here as we possibly can, because this is really, folks, an inside process and an outside process. Oregon's got 2 United States senators. We work on lots of bills and laws, and you turn on C-SPAN, and it's the amendment, and the amendment, and the amendment, blah, blah, blah. So on Inauguration Day, there was, of course, the ceremony at noon, lunch, and the Senate was convened at 4 o'clock. And the idea was there would be a couple of votes on nominations. And then there was a plan to let the man appointed to head the CIA, a fellow named Mike Pompeo, essentially go with no debate. And I said to myself, I was hearing this for the first time, I said, this is one of the most important positions in American government. This goes right to the heart of having policies that promote security and liberty. And I said, if they try to do this on some short-circuited kind of thing, while everybody is pretty much trying to determine if their tuxedo fits to go to some dinner, I'm going to object. And that's what they tried to do. And the Senate sort of stopped for like an hour or so because the Trump administration and their supporters in Congress just thought that you could short-circuit a real debate. If anybody thinks they're going to short-circuit it is going to have to run over me. Why did I think a real discussion was important? Y'all remember that not long ago there was this policy about collecting all the phone records of all you law-abiding people. The country didn't much care for that, so he reined it in. Mr. Pompeo has made a proposal for a centralized database that would include your lifestyle information. It would make anything proposed before look like small potatoes. And I said, no, we're not going to just say it was okay. What else had he done? He's had about 3 different positions on torture. First, he was all for it. Then he came to the Intelligence Committee and said he wasn't. Then we asked him some questions in writing, and he said, well, gee, maybe we could kind of look at altering the Army Field Manual, what's called the guidance materials for this. And on top of it, 2 days ago, he and the Trump administration nominated a person, you can see it, I'm not going to talk about any of the intelligence, look her up online, completely unsuited for this position. So I bring this up only by way of saying that what I'm going to do is spend all the time necessary to push back when I see policies that are flawed. And we're not going to take anything off the table. Nobody's asked about the Supreme Court yet. We're going to insist on 60 votes for a Supreme Court. For a Supreme Court nomination has, in a book, specifically gone after what Oregonians voted on twice, which was our unique death with dignity bill. The House of Representatives, not very many years ago, voted to throw our death with dignity law in the garbage can. chance. Because not only was that not the case with death with dignity, but remember Hobby Lobby with respect to women, again, having health care choices? So I'm glad you asked that.
Thank you. So we have 8841. So let's say 8841's turn. So or was 2897. And are they still here? I don't see a hand on those two numbers. Did anybody have 2808? Leslie, they're waving. And then make sure 8888 is getting ready.
Actually, I'm sorry, I feel like nobody. Sir?
Yes.
The previous question wasn't answered. It was about impeachment.
I think that's a different number. So 2897, you're gonna have to yell at us. Okay, you're off to 2808. Okay, now we're on 8888, and then also 2994, if you can get ready. All right.
Hi, Senator. Thanks for taking my question. My name is Dr. Shalom. I am a research biologist. I study the effects of climate change on wildlife species and endangered species in general. I come from a family of cattle ranchers and coal miners. And so my background is very red. And my question for you is, I suppose the concern I want to express, and my question is, how do we deal with the divisiveness in lack of communication between red, blue, and examples to me of what you're doing and what opportunities you see at a leadership level to bridge these gaps.
I just missed most of that. Now, I think you were talking about how we're going to bridge the gap.
Yeah, between these different opinions, and it seems so
Terrific. Could all of you hear that? It's a great question. And we're probably getting close to people leaving because I see folks walking out. I'll stick around and visit with people. That's a terrific question. So the question was, how when the nominee for Secretary of Energy came up, that was the first thing we wanted to know, was were they going to go back and see if anybody had ever said anything about climate change and things of this nature. One of the most ominous ways in which you get alternative facts is to try to find if you can get alternative science. And in particular, I tell people who come to see me, because I believe strongly that there is a very serious climate problem. You take out that recommendation from NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Agency. It's really just statistics, not really a recommendation. And tell me what's wrong with that. And nobody's ever been able to do it. So there are ways to constantly keep pushing back. And part of this, as we wrap up these meetings, is, and you all have been so kind to me and friendly and all the rest, the real test in government is, are you willing to stay at it until you get the facts? And for example, some of you may have seen, because it's now in a bunch of movies, that I asked the Director of National Intelligence whether the government collected any type of data at all on millions of Americans. And he lied. And he said no. It took us 6 months to be able to ask that question in broad daylight, going back and forth and back and forth. So I want you to know, and I assume that you have a background in science, as well. I'll do everything I can to make sure the facts get out. There aren't alternative facts. We can have political debates, but there aren't alternative facts. There's really only the truth.
The last one was 2994. I'm pretty sure they're right up on top.
Thank you, Senator. My name is Nancy Del Sol, and I'm from Corvallis, Oregon. Originally from Buenos Aires, Argentina.
Where are you?
I'm right here. Thank you for speaking about and asking the person that asked about conciliation. And I'm here to ask about a different kind of conciliation. You see, it is different when you're not originally from the United States. It is different to live in Oregon, in Corvallis, in a pretty much a very white town, to have our voice heard. So I think that I would like to ask you a few questions about this. You see, I feel, let me tell you a little bit about where I'm from. So I lived the 10 first years of my life in a dictatorship. So for me, I'm struggling here, and I love public speaking, but this is a tough subject. For me, the fact that we're here, that we have the freedom to hear and to vote, that we have the freedom to be able to speak. You guys have probably, some of you maybe do, but it's the most amazing thing that we really need to protect us, because it's very, very dangerous when we're talking about losing our liberties. So I know.
within our own state, our own neighborhoods, our own communities, so that we can all be stronger together. So it's not only talk.
As you can tell, your friends and neighbors very much identify with what you have said. You make us proud. When my father came to this country, he was 14, didn't speak a word of English, and he felt exactly like you described feeling when you came. And guess what? We are a nation of immigrants. And what is so flawed about some of these executive orders and the policies on immigrants and refugees and travel bans is they just defy common sense, they defy American values, they're going to harm American security, they're going to be a huge magnet for recruiting, terrorists. The military is concerned about whether they're going to be able to train people from these countries to help us fight ISIS. So these are badly flawed policies. When you ask, what can I do? I guess I was recommending. And I said, here's kind of the way I've been spending my time. I'm leading a fight against three of the most flawed nominees that have been offered. I push back every time there's an opportunity. The president says there's people voting illegally. I say, not true. Why don't you use the Oregon kind of model? And then when we're home, this is the way we're going to do it. Because I want you to know, this is so important for immigrants and those who are the minority. It's so important in our state to know that you don't